Great. So look, a massive welcome to today to Eddie on the podcast. So I actually met Eddie at a networking event a good few months ago. Sat and I had a coffee with him, had a real good chat about his journey, and I've pretty much stalked him ever since to get him on this podcast. So I even took a bribe of a charity donation for his run. So massively appreciate it. So if you don't mind, just introduce yourself, Eddie, that would be superb, please, buddy.
Also, well, yeah, no problem. Yeah, and I'd like to thank you for that contribution. That makes me a professional speaker now, I think.
Absolutely.
I'm only 50 quid, mind. My name's Eddie Czestochowski. I'm the managing director of a company called Self-Pack Solutions. We are a manufacturer of specialist battery packs. People always think of batteries as kind of EVs and motor cars, but really we are small, handheld, portable devices. We've done it for about 25 years. Really love what I do.
Love it. Excellent. I know I love the question, podcast off the first question. What does it mean to you, Eddie, to be a leader? What do you say?
Oh, you know, that's one of those questions, okay? It's like when people say to you, oh, you're an entrepreneur. It's a word I don't really like.
I agree.
It's one of those things that I chose to be a leader mainly because many years ago, when I was working for other companies, I got to a point in my career where I couldn't become a leader. You know, the people around me didn't think that I was good enough to do it. So I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to do it myself. And effectively, that's what I've done. I think it's still it's like being, it's a work in progress. You never, ever stop learning about being a leader. So for me, it's something I enjoy doing.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting that the entrepreneur bit, actually, because I agree with that. I don't class myself as an entrepreneur at all. I class myself as a business owner. And I think there is a difference. My business partner, I class him as an entrepreneur because he's got multiple businesses and he's just always thinks they're like new age. He's like a new age inventor. You know, he's always thinking about new ideas. Where this one idea for me is too much pressure. You know what I mean? It's more than enough. So, I mean, what do you class yourself as a?
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, I just feel as though in my business, all I've done really is find opportunities and develop them. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that I've been quite good at doing that. Okay. And if that's what makes you an entrepreneur, then fair and good. But it's not a word that I kind of, I kind of enjoy.
Cringe. It's a bit cringe, yeah.
You know, it's in a way. I just kind of think that, you know, we do what we do, you know, and if you enjoy what you do, and obviously you enjoy what you do, you know, it's just kind of a natural thing, isn't it? You know.
Oh, you are. Yeah, I completely agree. I always have a dig around on LinkedIn before I got on this, and yours fascinated me because someone has had a successful business for 25 years. Obviously, a really good background before that, and I love the fact. I think it's going back 1978. Apologies. Stacking shelves in Morrisons to. I mean, it's a proper journey that, and it's a motivational journey. I mean, take me back then for sort of even I guess pre that. I mean, what were sort of the early years like for you?
Well, okay. I mean, you know, I come from a background really where, because my parents were immigrants to this country, we effectively started with nothing. They started with nothing. I was born here, started with nothing. So I've always been used to kind of having to work for everything I did. Okay. So obviously the first job I got was at Morrisons when I was in sixth form. And in all honesty, it probably was the reason why I didn't go to university. I mean, I went to Manchester Poly in the end, but it's because I spent too much time working and not enough time revising. To kind of, so just going back to those days, it taught me a lot of things. You know, believe it or not, stacking shelves. Morrisons in Bradford. They had this great kind of system where at the beginning of a school term, they'd take on about 30 students working Saturdays and evening shifts. But after a couple of months, they'll have whittled them down. You know, the people that they don't see as being workers, they just get rid of. Yep. You know, I don't think they could do it, but maybe they do it today, I don't know. But so for me, you know, I managed to get through all of that, and I was there for about 3 years. And by the end of it, I decided I'd messed my A-levels up. Okay, I went back to kind of resit them because I was desperate to get away to Manchester.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And at the end of the 3 years, they sort of said to me, you know, rather than go away to college, why don't you come on our management trainee course? And you know what? I was no way in hell I would have gone that course, because the amount of work, the amount of hours that training managers at supermarkets have to do in the early days, it's incredible. Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you know, I still felt as though I wanted to do something else, and I still wanted to go away to college, and I still wanted to get well, in those days I wanted to get a degree, but I didn't manage that. I just got a H&D in electronics in the end. And that's kind of that step, really.
Yeah.
I went to Manchester, managed to get a H&D. Actually, I didn't really enjoy it that much, because it was just hard work.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, did you go to college? I don't know if you did.
Yeah, university route. So yeah, so I went to university.
I mean, I lived in a house, and all the people in my house were all doing economics and history, and they were having, like, you know, reading days and reading weeks, and then I was doing an engineering course, and you know, and it was like 4.5 days a week, full on, you know, like 9 till 5.
I think the wrong one here. Yeah.
Yeah. But I got through it, because it's always been in my character to kind of see things through to the end. So I got that H&D, and I had a kind of a basics in electronics. Okay. Yeah. You know, God knows, I can't remember much of it now, but you know, you learn a lot, don't you? Yeah. And then what was the next thing? How I got into selling?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting there, because what you said, you know, the start from nothing, that mentality. Was that sort of built in you because of what you saw, or did your parents sort of instill that into you in terms of, look, we've you know, we need to work hard for what we get, or was that just something you saw with learned behaviour?
In all honesty, it was obviously, when you're a kid, you don't know any better. But
yeah.
All I could see around me was my mum and dad, well, my dad especially, working all the time. You know, literally sort of, you know, working sort of Monday to Friday, and then doing weekends painting and decorating for people, because he was excuse me, because he was an ex-paratrooper. He had no fear of heights. Okay, so he used to paint houses, you know, outsides of houses and things. So I saw that in him as I was growing up, and it was just something that you instilled. And also the fact that you have no money. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. You know, how do you get money? You have to work hard for it, you know. And so that's something I think, you know, was instilled in me from a very, very, very young age. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the engineering side, then, I mean, obviously parents weren't engineers, so was that just something you enjoyed it at school, or what was the?
No, not at all. No, I think it's funny, because I wanted to, you know, when I was a kid, I loved the radio. You know, I loved kind of, you know, I mean, I was a Man U fan living in Bradford, and I used to try to get, you know, Radio Manchester games on my local radio. I just loved the radio. Okay. Yeah. So I actually wanted to be a sound engineer, and that was my ambition.
Yeah.
But because I didn't get the right grades, you know, I wanted to go to Salford Uni. Didn't get the right grades to go in, but I was determined to move to Manchester. So I ended up sort of getting onto a kind of a H&D in electronics. Okay. Yep. Got on the course, and then kind of quickly realized that I didn't know anything about electronics. I didn't have any hobby. It wasn't my passion. I didn't kind of, you know, I mean, there were people on my course that were, you know, their hobbies were building aerials in the back garden. You know, they had ambitions to work for the BBC and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sort of sat there thinking, God, I've never even picked up a soldering iron, you know, and all that kind of thing. You know, I worked through it. I got through all the kind of the what's the word? I passed all the exams, okay, and I did it, and I managed to kind of get the qualification. And then when I finished it, I kind of decided I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Okay, so I kind of fell into what I'm doing. I went for jobs on what was called the milk round then. I don't know if it's still called that now. And I got offered a job, would you believe, down in Chelmsford. Yeah, I moved to Chelmsford, right? And it was going to be like, the job title was going to be, I was going to be a technical author. Okay. And I went down to the interview, and the guy said to me, "Oh, well, yeah, we've got enough work here for the next 30 years, you know." And he says, "Oh, you've got the job, but it'll take a few weeks for positive vetting. Maybe because of my background, because having a Polish name, maybe I was some sleeper spy or something. I don't know." But anyway, it actually took them about 8 weeks to positively vet me. But in that time, I got another job in Manchester, and I really wanted to stay in Manchester because my girlfriend and my wife now, we had a flat there, I should say. And all my friends were there, and I kind of wanted to stay in Manchester, so I ended up taking this job, working for a company in Oldham, which is about half an hour bus ride away from where I lived. And the job was, it's how it got me into what I'm doing now, in a way, because the job initially was 3 months in internal sales, okay. Then I had 3 months in external sales, and then I had 3 months in the factory. Okay. And I thought I was on some kind of like management trainee course.
Grad scheme, yeah.
That wasn't the case. But basically what happened, they made everyone redundant after 9 months. Okay.
Right.
Another part of the country, took another grant somewhere else, But what that taught me was actually, of the 3 stints that I did, the bit that I enjoyed the most was the external technical selling. I loved the idea of the freedom of getting, I was given a car and it was like, go out and sell, go out and find products, find customers and things. And I really loved that. So I think what I did then was, if I remember rightly, I took a couple of weeks off work. I took a couple of weeks off, went on holiday, came back and then joined a recruitment agency like yourself.
Okay, yeah.
And I got this job in Manchester for a company called Oldham Batteries. Okay, and my job was was selling minus cap lamps. Okay, into industry.
Yeah.
Okay, because at that time, Oldham Batteries, one of their main markets for the product was into the coal board. Okay, the coal board was about to this was like in 1986. Was kind of being decimated. Okay, so they were looking for where they could sell their product into industry, and they took me on as a role to kind of expand their sales, and it was really interesting. And I think that's where I got a lot of my ability to. But I think I've always been able to get on with people, but it's where I kind of got my ability to kind of fend for myself, because it was a typical kind of British-run company in the 80s. It was kind of like, here you go, no training, just go and do it.
Yeah. Sink or swim.
Sink or swim. That was in my career. I've always been a sink or swim kind of person. I've always been chucked into situations, and it's either you can either do it or you can't do it. Okay, and I've always been lucky to kind of find a way through it somehow. And again, this was in the days of, I think, pages were just about coming in. So there's no mobile or anything like that. And I remember going, I used to say to the secretary at work, Jean, and this was planning, Jean, I won't be in this week. I'll be down in the Cornish tin mines. I'll be down in Bristol, and that was it. Nobody sort of said, who are you going to see? What are you going to do? It was just as generic as that. And my boss was like, well, just go out and do what you can do. And I literally went all over the country, and it was great. It was great fun because I used to tie it in with visits to friends, because my friends student friends were all back home. So I'd tie up a kind of a visit to Bristol with a friend, and I'd go and see a few people, or a visit to to London. It was great, but it taught me sort of I don't know, it taught me to get on with anybody, and I think that's
massive part.
It was kind of what helped me in my business, I think,
And then you fast forward to starting the business. I mean, so how did that come about? Was that something you'd always thought from this is what I want to do, or was it an opportunity?
No, what happened was, to go back a step again, I did 4 years working for this Oldham Batteries. Okay, realized by that point in that job, I was being promoted because of people leaving. So I became export sales manager. Okay. But I wasn't getting paid export sales managers kind of money. right? And I remember going to I spent a week in Norway, and I'm sat there kind of on my own, not knowing what to do, right? In at the deep end again, and then starting to think like, well, if I was an export sales manager for another company, I'd be getting paid twice as much for this, and I'd be getting some training. So I decided that I would go away and look for another job. So I found another job in another area of the battery business, and it was a little bit more technical than selling car plants. It was selling sort of lithium batteries. So I did that for 3 or 4 years. Then I got the opportunity again. I kind of in that role. I got to the point where I knew the job back to front. I could do what I could do, but I couldn't see where the progression was going to be. They weren't going to make me a leader. I mean, they progressed me to kind of specific project management for certain big customers, but I couldn't see that kind of like, well, how are you going to be how are you going to run the division? So I thought, right, okay. I got offered a job to move to the northeast. My wife is from South Shields, so I took this job up here. Spent about 4 years working in a factory, learning a different aspect of the battery business, more in production. Did that for about 4 years, and then had this urge to get back out on the road again, because the constraints of being in a factory after 8 years of kind of being totally free.
Cabin fever.
Well, it was a bit like that. So I got the opportunity to go back out on the road. Went to work for a company in the Midlands, and after about 18 months of that, I thought, I could do this better myself. And it was just that whole thing. So I just decided I wanted to be my own boss. I thought, I could just as well do this myself. And that's what I did, so I kind of fell into it. I fell into it really, and that was about 24 years ago. And I took a little unit in a lovely business in Tedco in Jarrow. Was there for about 18 months, working on my own. Eventually, decided I needed to take somebody else on. And it just grew from there. Every year we took on another person. And that's why I say being a leader is a strange thing. I kind of, I run my own company. I can, I like doing what I do, but it's like anything. Sometimes you get up days, sometimes you get down days, don't you?
Absolutely. You
have to take the rough with the smooth.
100%. And would you classify yourself? And this has probably changed over time. As someone who leads from the front, do you like to sort of delegate now and sit back and let others? What sort of style do you think works now?
Well, that's the thing, that you adapt over the years, don't you? I mean, in the first few years,
you're everything, aren't you? Yeah.
Everything. You have to do everything. I was doing like most business owners would do. You never stop working. Obviously, I was my own boss, and I did. I did still do family things. I could do what I wanted to do, but ultimately, you spent hours and hours and hours working, and so you kind of learnt every job that was going. You had to do it. So I do feel as though that I do try to lead from the front. I won't do anything I won't give anybody anything to do that I haven't done myself before. And I've tried over the years to adopt a style within the company that. And again, it's changing slightly now, but in the early days, I always liked people to be able to do everything and to have an understanding of everything, because in a small company, you need to be really, really flexible, and I was always scared of the fact, well, if there's just, let's say, your role is a specific buyer, well, that's all you do, buy. But we needed to be, we needed people that could kind of actually put their hands on and kind of do a bit of soldering, bit of this, bit of that. How it's developed now is obviously we're a much bigger company now, and now we're going more formal, and now we're kind of it is more specific. We do try to take on people that have got specific skills in specific roles, and it's not necessary that, for example, our buyer needs to go on the shop floor, or our HR person needs to do that. So you just have to adapt, I think, as a small company.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's funny because sometimes, because all you want to do is grow, and that might be headcount, that might be profit, however it is. And I think you're always on that journey, aren't you? Some days I look and go, God, those first 2 years were probably the easiest in a way, and the most fun, because there was almost less responsibility. Because I think there's a certain pressure that comes from just being responsible for people, I think, isn't it? It's a different type of pressure.
Yeah, it's a lot. I've got to be honest, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder today and the last couple of years than it was at the very beginning. I mean, now, honestly, you get tied up in sort of HR issues, which, you know, I mean, now you need HR experts in your company. You know, you didn't need that. I didn't feel as though you needed that in the early years. You know, maybe it's because we were small. I mean, now we employ 30 people. Maybe in the early years, I mean, I grew from sort of like, you know, literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, every year we grew by an extra 1 or 2 people. We never had any big spurt growths. It was always, and it was always lots of friends and family and people you knew. Well, I remember not so much family, apart from kind of my wife and the daughters occasionally helped. But it was like lots of friends and people that you knew and referrals from people you knew. So you always trusted them. I think as you get bigger and bigger, there's more people that you don't know. And you've got to be a bit more careful in these days. You know?
I've thought that. I don't know if the generation of you have changed. Do you know what I mean? Or the expectations have changed, but I completely agree. I think there's much more with the younger generation. There seems to be more people and HR issues than there was potentially 15 years ago, I think. Just different mentality, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose it's a fact of life, isn't it? But yeah, and there's you know, there are good sides to that, you know. I mean, we've always been a company, or I've always been a company that I've always tried to do the best for everyone that works for us, you know. And I'm also a realist in that, because I know in myself that, you know, I moved 4 times in my career to the job I'm in now. Okay. And I always moved because I wasn't satisfied in the job, and the people around me couldn't give me that satisfaction. You know, so I'm always conscious of the fact that I've got to do that with the people that work for me. I've got to make them. I feel as though I've got to give them something they want to do. You know, because otherwise they will move on. You know.
I think part of your job at the level when you're an MD or director, whatever, a managerial, becomes almost like just making sure everyone's happy to some extent. It's keeping a happy house, isn't it? It feels like half the time.
Well, to be honest, a big part of my job is trying to keep. I feel as though a big part of my job now is to try to keep everyone happy. But you do realize that it doesn't matter what you do, you'll never keep everyone happy.
No, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. Like you say, manufacturing as well is dramatically changing. You'll have seen, you know, even running your own business in 24, 25 years, you'll have seen huge changes, ups and downs, peaks and troughs, probably no more so in the last few years. I mean, how different, do you have interest in this? And so if you go back 25 years, how different do you think manufacturing is today than it was then?
Well, I mean, absolutely. These days it's much more IT focused, you know, which is great, you know. It's great. I mean, you know, you know, it's all robots and IT systems and what have you. It's the way it's got to go. I mean, and again, I personally, I recognize that a long time ago in that, and I think that's been one of my successes in our business. When I first set the business up, I realized that it was me that knew everything. You know, not blowing my own trumpet, but I had at the time. I mean, now my brain's going a bit doolally, but I had the encyclopedic knowledge of part numbers and references and this, that, and the other. And anytime anybody phones in and wanted an answer to a question, it was me that had to it would come back to me. And I thought, well, yeah, I'm going to have to change something. So we set up an Access database at the time and I kind of tried to download all the information I had onto the system. And very early on, we adopted kind of e-commerce websites. I mean, we had that sort of 15 years ago. You know, nowadays, I mean, you know, you can knock up an e-commerce website for a couple of grand on it. You know, anybody can do it. But we were doing that a long time ago. And we were very much into IT, you know, very much into systems. I think that's the big change these days. And I think it's a shame really that you know that there are not as many people with a hand to eye skills now. They're all, you know, all the kids come in now and they're all kind of grown up kind of playing computer games, and they haven't sort of grown up building Meccano sets or building ethics models, which is what you want, I think, in industry. You want people that are kind of quite dexterous, you know.
100%. Yeah, exactly that. And I think it's interesting because so many skills are going to change in manufacturing, like you say, because technology, is taking over. So on one hand, it's great people are coming through with these IT, but at the same time, there's still a lot of skills within manufacturing that do require manual input and do require people to be very technical minded. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how that probably has changed over time.
It's funny, again, when I first came up here, 25 years ago, I worked at the battery factory down the road, and Glenn, the guy that worked for me, was the technical drawer, and if he was doing a drawing, the drawings would be the size of the table, and it would take a week to do. Okay, but he knew it inside out. He knew everything. Nowadays, with AutoCAD, you've got kids coming along who can draw things and can do it in an hour, but I don't know whether they necessarily understand the ins and outs of what they're actually doing. Some they can kind of pull it all together, but whether they can actually visualize it the same way, you were taught in the good old days, I don't know.
It's interesting.
I am fashioned at heart. That's me. I do like the old ways sometimes.
But look, that's what manufacturing and British manufacturing was made from. It was it was that mindset, wasn't it? It's just good engineers that have sort of grown over time. So yeah, I guess like anything, it changes. I
think there obviously are some good kids out there, some good engineers, but not as many as they used to be, because they're just not taught the same way anymore.
No, it is different. Obviously, the last 2 years or 2.5 years or whatever it has been now, it has been up and down, and probably the biggest challenge for a lot of companies out there. How was that? I guess the pandemic's a good example. You've got Brexit, pandemic. Probably pandemic is probably the one that really sort of pulled the rug for a lot of companies. What was that like when that first hit for you?
If I look back to it, okay. We were the first couple of months really were panic stations for everybody, because nobody knew what was going on. Okay, I've had people walking in, I remember the night of the Boris talk. The next day, people kind of wanted to give up work. Honestly, the panic in some people was incredible. Okay, we made a couple of people, if I remember again, we put them on furlough for about 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, till things settled down, and then we brought everyone back. With the exception of a couple of people that were off for ill health, that were potentially kind of vulnerable. But other than that, we kind of worked through it. We were lucky in that we had a lot of space in the factory. We were also dead lucky in that I'd just built a little office that I was going to turn into a lovely meeting room. But in the end, we turned that into an extra production, and we brought the production upstairs, and we just spread people out. So the first couple of months were, we managed to get through it in terms of, we were classed as a company that had to be working because we were supplying various
key worker status.
Exactly. We were supplying hospitals, we were supplying some medical people, we were mainly supplying the utility industry. So we kind of got through it. Okay. We weren't, I don't think we weren't lucky enough to, and I don't know if lucky is the right word, but we didn't benefit from any kind of respirator type business or that kind of thing. We didn't get any kind of windfall business. We were just basically doing what we were doing. Okay. And we got through it. And the big benefit for me that came out of it all was we actually acquired a company in the middle of the pandemic, or rather, I lose track of the time now, but about 2 years ago, we acquired a company. And I think that part of the reason we acquired that company was this other company had decided that the battery industry was too complicated for them, and they wanted to concentrate on their own business, their core business. And we had the opportunity here, we had the space, we had the resources, we had the people to take it on. So it was a bit of a risk. But, I think that's what really is given us a big jump over the last 2 years.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That's always, I get from you that's instilled in you. There's definitely some you are an entrepreneur. There's definitely some risk. I get a calculated risk taker. Someone who backs themselves.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think, okay, if the definition of an entrepreneur is somebody that can see an opportunity, have a go at it. I mean, that certainly has always been me through my career. I mean, I was always classed, my strength in my career, I believe, I was classed as like a pioneer salesperson. Okay, my role was to find the business, develop it, get it to a certain point, and then pass it on to somebody else in house to look after. And that, because I like doing it, and I think it's like anything in life. If you like doing something, it's easy, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Once you stop liking something, then it's really hard. But I always loved finding something new, and I was always amazed in the battery industry that, especially what we do, we have 3,000 different designs. Would you believe? Every day there's a new application that comes along that needs some kind of bespoke battery pack. I mean, batteries are a sexy word today because we've got huge factories being built up and down the road but they're only going to make one product. So how's that? For me, that's not very interesting. I'm sorry to say. Making car batteries for the rest of your life wouldn't interest me in the slightest.
Diversity.
Again, I like diversity, and I like the fact that we make small volumes, small to medium-sized volumes. For all sorts of applications. You think of application, I guarantee you would put a battery in there.
And that means, I guess, for you that you can be agile. Do you know what I mean? In terms of you look at recessions and pandemics and all sorts. I guess you can pivot if you need to be in that sense.
Yeah, well, that again, that's the strength of the battery of my type of battery business is that. I've developed my team so that we are very agile. We can switch on to new things very quickly. We took on things like 3D AutoCAD really early on. Okay, I mean, when we were taking on, people were still drawing in 2D, but we took on 3D. I employed 2 guys to do it internally. Again, there were people at the top. Some of my competitors at the time didn't have that. They were bringing it in as I needed it, but I just thought, look, maybe I'm a bit of a control freak. I don't know. I like the idea that we've got everything as much as we can within these 4 walls.
Yeah.
Okay? So again, things like the websites. Our website. We had 3 or 4 people working on our website on the IT side of our company, and some people said, "Well, where's the benefit in that? You can kind of employ." You can sub that out, but I like the idea that if we want to change something, we can do it ourselves now, tomorrow. And honestly, it was one of the reasons why when I saw the opportunity to take over this company, to acquire this company, we had the facility in house, and we literally did it within the space of we took it over and integrated it within the space of about 4 weeks. And when I look back, I met you at the. What was it?
The Inside Media, wasn't it? The Made Northeast Awards on table.
That was the first award that we'd ever won that we'd never entered. Okay, I've had loads of awards over the years, and I've won some and lost some, but that one, we were kind of were entered for it by somebody, I don't know who, and the reason that we won it, I think, was because at the start of Brexit. Prior to Brexit, we didn't export anything to anybody. Well, sorry, I tell a lie. We exported very, very occasionally to Croatia, I think, and maybe Ireland. But Brexit came along, okay, and we took this company over, and within the space of 6 months, we were exporting. Sorry about that. We were exporting to about 15 countries. By the end of the year, we exported to 32 different countries.
Wow.
Which was incredible because we'd never done it before, and I think in a way that's again been, that's kind of in at the deep end kind of mentality that, we didn't know what was going to happen. Didn't know. It was really difficult, and it's still difficult. Brexit's the worst thing in the world. What can I do? It's with an Italian mother and a Polish father,
Absolutely, and I still think the consequence of that we'll probably still yet to see. So it's I completely agree. I love manufacturing, and I like to talk about manufacturing. I love talking about manufacturing with people like yourself because you know it a lot more than me. What do you think is the best thing about manufacturing, would you say, in the UK?
Oh, the best. Oh, wow, what a question. The best thing about
Stop it.
manufacturing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the strength in the UK is our ability to adapt and to create things. Okay, to develop the things. I think where we kind of probably fall down is we can't make it as much. In some areas, I tell a lie because in some areas we're really, really good. Obviously, the automotive area, especially up here, we're really good at. There's a lot of investment gone into that. But there are lots of other areas where maybe the market potential isn't great. So and we depend on kind of bringing it in from the Far East and other countries. It's a tough gig, I think. Manufacturing.
Yeah, it really is.
It really, there are companies that try to do more and more in the UK, and I think the kind of the problems that we had in COVID as a result of COVID, the shipping crisis and the cost of bringing anything over has made it a little bit more attractive to onshore things again. And I support anybody that does that. It's good on them.
Yeah, 100%. I think the supply chains was all about price previously, but now it's not at all. Things COVID, I think people with complicated supply chains now looking to onshore it and make sure it's as concise as possible. Because that was a real problem for a lot of, it still is, I guess, particularly semiconductors and this type of stuff. On the flip side of that, Eddie, what would you say is, and I think there's a few of them right now, is the biggest challenge to manufacturing in the UK right now? Would you say?
Oh wow.
I mean, this might be manufacturing. It could be for sell-back solutions, and what do you think?
I think it's the whole problem of getting younger people into manufacturing and making it attractive for them. So I think there's too much these days of on the TV and on kids think it's easy to do other things and they don't want to. They've still got this idea of manufacturing being dirty and being hard work, which is hard work, but it's also can be very interesting. I mean, look at somebody like me. I look where I've got to where I've got to through manufacturing or through assembly, whatever. So there are lots of opportunities in it, and we somehow have got to get younger kids into it, and I think that's the challenge for everybody, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fully supportive of anything to do with STEM or encourage people to just get into it. Give them the opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree. Fully enough, I followed something on LinkedIn this morning that I saw, which was it was a foundation to get like 9 to 14-year-olds. And I thought that's great, actually, and even potentially even younger, because people are looking at the sort of the 15 to 16 bracket, which is crucial. But sometimes people's minds are already made up to what they want to be by then. So I think if you can get them at a really early age, it's fantastic.
Oh, I think you've got to get them young now. I think you really have to get them kind of 6, 7, and 8. At that kind of age. And that's what I'm saying about give them. I would joke with my wife. The only toy I can remember as a kid was stickle bricks.
Yeah.
And Lego and that kind of thing. Things that you made things with. Not sort of these days. It's it makes me. I've got to be honest. It makes me sad to see little kids on iPads when they're 2, 3, 4 year old, and I just think, oh my God, I'm 60, so it's not my.
No, I completely agree. I think it's like that, isn't it? They're not seeing what's going on around them. It's just tunnel vision, and I think the consequences of that are huge. I completely agree. Right, some quick fire questions to end, if that's okay. They're never quick fire, but I'll try. What are 3 things or words that make up a good leader?
Well, I think you need to have passion. Yeah, you need to be enthusiastic. You need to believe in yourself. You need to believe in your team. What was the other one? 3 words.
Yeah, 3 things or 3 words that make up a good leader. So
the thing, I think to be honest, it's teamwork. Really, is actually one of the key things about being a good leader. You can't be a good leader unless you've got a good team around you. And I don't know what the word is that comes out of that, but teamwork.
Yeah, maybe? Yeah, no, 100%. Exactly that. And I think that's what good leaders do, don't they? They build a good team around them, and then they inspire. I guess I completely agree. What's more important to you, the academic route or on the job learning?
I think on the job learning is probably more important. I mean, you know, from my experience, from the people I've seen, I think you these days especially, you know, I think, you know, some kids come out of university, they've come out with fantastic overdrafts, which I know that they say they don't have to pay back until they're 100 or something, but you know, I've got people here that have started at 17 that have got the degree, but they've done it on the job. You know, there are companies out there that will support the right kind of people to do that, and I just feel as though, I'm sorry, there seems to be flies around my room today. I don't know why, but no flies on me, I should say. But there you go. So I would favour on the job training personally. You know?
Yeah, I think
if you are going to university, I would definitely favour moving away from home. Okay, because that's the real benefit, I suppose, that you have to fend for yourself. So get yourself to Plymouth or Manchester or wherever. You know, I think kind of go to Newcastle Uni when you live in Newcastle and bringing your washing home every weekend is not a university experience.
Not part experience. I agree. I did a media course, so it doesn't. Well, I'm on a podcast now, so maybe it did help me, but I didn't really help me to build a business. But I grew up in Sheffield, and I went to University of Sunderland, and it was the experience of living away for me, that's what I took everything from.
It's you know, living away. I mean, again, if you're going to do that, it's how you cope away from home, how you learn how to cook, how you learn how to what, you know, all the things that you kind of do that, you know, if you're at home you don't do. So
think go swimming, isn't it again? Yeah,
that's what I would recommend. You know.
Yeah, completely agree. Excellent. And just finally, this is the question I asked my last guest to ask you. This is actually. So my last guest was Alex Stapleton, who's the sales director of Alexander Technology, who were just down the road from you, actually. So he asked, here we go. I always read this. How do you balance supporting your team to get the result you need versus allowing people the space to learn and make mistakes in the job?
How do you balance that?
How do you balance supporting a team to get the result you need versus allowing people space to make mistakes?
What I try to do, I mean, I've got to say, what I try to do is, and it is hard, okay, but I do try to allow people to make their own decisions, and I do try to, you know, kind of let them sometimes go wrong, okay, which is really hard because when you see something not going the right way, your first reaction is to kind of put them right. But you know, I think you've got to learn by your mistakes, you know. So I do try to let people give, you know, I do want to create entrepreneurs, you know, I do want people to come up with ideas, and I do want them to find a better way of doing it, because I don't know the best answers all the time. You know, I know my answer, you know, but it's not always the best answer, you know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, it does. I always thought when you said that, I was thinking about parenting, because it's very. I think parenting and management are very similar, aren't you? And your kids, you want to help them and teach them, because sometimes you got to let them make mistakes. It's a challenge, isn't it? It's the same with management, really.
I mean, you know, one of my real passions in life is I play a lot of chess, you know, and I try to teach kids a lot of chess. And what you try to teach them is actually winning is not the important thing when you're learning that game. You know, it's not important to win and win, because, you know, sometimes what you see is young kids getting really upset when they lose, right? You know, they're in a little competition and they start to cry because they lose. But it's normal. I mean, I've seen lots of kids do it. And you try to say, that's not the point. The point is you learn by losing, because if you know what you've done wrong, you won't do it right again. If you keep doing it wrong, obviously, you know, you could argue that maybe it's not the right game for them or the right thing to do. But people learn from mistakes. That's the be all and end all, isn't it? You know,
100%.
So, you know, it's fantastic if you get it right the first time, but that's not always the case.
No, you learn much more from your mistakes and do your wins, don't you? You don't analyze your wins, you just celebrate them. So yeah.
The hard thing sometimes is to get people to understand that when you are offering some advice, that it's not it shouldn't be taken as a criticism. It should be taken as like, you know, this is kind of a way of doing it. You know, it's not the best way of doing it, but you know, sometimes people can see kind of that as criticism, and it's not always meant to be that way. You know, I think in business or in anything, you want to achieve what's best for everyone at the end of the day. It's a bigger picture you've got to look at. So
Yeah.
don't take anything as criticism. Think of it as positive advice, you know.
No, I completely agree. No, it's a great answer. You've done Alex proud. It's battery firms linking up there.
I've never actually met Alex. I know of him. I know. Obviously, the battery world is a very small world, and we know lots of mutual friends.
Yes.
I've never actually met Alex. I know a lot of the people that know him, so he knows he's a nice guy.
Yeah, no, well, you can know he's a good, nice guy. You can thank him for his question. He seems so.
Ask me to ask a question because I haven't thought about it.
You've got things on now. So, but look, Eddie, this has been great. I really appreciate it, and loads of wins. And you know what I like, what I really enjoyed is all these years on. No respect to that, you've still got the passion. You know what I mean? You've still got the passion to do what you do, love what you do, and I can just see that will be instilled into all your staff. And I think that can't be taken for granted, because I think a lot of people aren't like that, and they haven't got that natural passion. They've built a business to sell it, or they've got an end game, and they won't enjoy the journey until they get there. And I think that doesn't seem at all like the case for you. So yeah.
Well, thank you for that. No, you're right. I mean, I still enjoy what I do, and you know, I'm now at the kind of stage of my career that I've got to be honest, I do want to slow down a little bit, but I still want to be involved somehow, and I do. So now the focus now is on training the team, and it's giving them as much help and as much external help, because I'm not the expert. So we're bringing in people and giving them bits of advice, and you know, it's really interesting. I love it. Can't wait for the next stage anyway.
Next 5 years, yeah.